If you walk into a crowded, incredibly noisy room and you really want to get everyone's attention, the basic human instinct is to just shout.
Right, yeah, to grab a megaphone.
Exactly. You grab a megaphone, stand on a table, and just try to make more noise than anyone else in the building.
It's the standard playbook, you have to try to overpower the noise with your own noise.
But every once in a while, someone walks into that exact same chaotic room, stands right in the middle of it, and just whispers.
Hmm.
And somehow that whisper is so compelling, so, deeply unexpected, that the entire room goes dead silent just to listen.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Right. And that is exactly what the Malian musician Habib Koité did to the global music scene. So today, we're doing a deep dive into a really fascinating, incredibly detailed column from Monumental Movement Records, or MMR, that explores exactly how Koité sparked this quiet revolution.
It's such a compelling piece.
It really is. Our mission today is to explore how he translated the ancient, incredibly diverse soul of the Republic of Mali into a global language using, well, basically just an acoustic guitar.
And in doing so, his approach offers you, the listener, a literal masterclass in how to maintain your own local roots and identity in a world that is, frankly, overwhelmingly globalized.
Yeah, it's a totally different paradigm of influence.
Exactly. The contrast the source sets up right at the beginning makes this so clear because, when we think of late 20th century African music reaching the global stage, the mind instantly goes to artists like Nigeria's Fela Kuti.
Oh, yeah. Afrobeat.
Right. He shook the world with Afrobeat, and it was loud, it was overtly political, it had these massive brass sections.
It was a brilliant, necessary shout.
It was. But Habib Koité, he completely changed the global music landscape with whispers, with acoustic strings and this profound, almost radical sense of peace.
Which is wild when you think about it. But to understand the sheer scale of what Koité accomplished, we kind of have to look at the raw material he was working with. Mali carries a cultural heritage dating all the way back to the 13th century Mali Empire.
Yeah, this is not a society with a short memory.
Not at all. And the mechanism for keeping that memory alive is historically carried by the griot, or jelly.
And we should probably clarify what that role actually is, because just calling them a musician doesn't really cover it.
Right, not even close.
The griots are the traditional storytellers, sure, but they're also the absolute keepers of ethnic memory for their people.
Wow.
Yeah, they mediate disputes, they recite genealogies, they essentially hold the entire social fabric together.
I was trying to visualize how that actually functions in a society. Rather than looking at them as performers, it's more like they're society's living hard drive. Or a musical Wikipedia.
The living hard drive, yeah, that's perfect.
They are the literal memory of the people. You don't just listen to a griot to hear a nice melody. You listen to remember who you are.
That's a powerful way to look at it, especially when you factor in the sheer diversity of Mali. The source highlights ethnic groups like the Bambara, the Songhai, the Tuareg, the Pel, and the Dogon.
So many different groups.
Exactly. And each of these groups brings their own distinct instruments, entirely different rhythmic systems, and specific melodic traditions.
So the soil that these roots are pulling from is incredibly varied.
Very much so.
Yeah.
When you put all those distinct cultures together within one national border, it creates what the source describes as a fundamental polyphony.
A fundamental polyphony.
Right. It is a massive, multi-layered chorus of different identities all sounding at once. What's fascinating here is how Koité managed to take this immense, heavy historical role and distill it into a modern, single instrument without losing its cultural dignity.
Because if you have a country defined by massive, overlapping polyphonies, and you have this incredibly heavy, deeply rooted historical role of the griot, distilling all of that down into one guy holding a modern acoustic guitar sounds literally impossible.
You'd think the instrument would just buckle under the weight of it.
Right. But that is the crux of the genius here. How exactly did he distill this massive cultural history into one instrument?
Well, he had to completely reinvent how the guitar was played.
Okay, let's unpack this, because he definitely had the background for it. He was born in 1958 in Kayes, Mali, and crucially, his grandmother was a griot.
So he was born directly into that living root system we talked about.
Exactly. But he didn't just rely on tradition. He went and studied both classical guitar and ethnomusicology at the National Institute of Arts, the INA, in Bamako, and he graduated in 1982.
So he has the traditional foundation and he has the academic classical framework. He understands the rules of Western music theory inside and out.
And because he understands them, he knows exactly how to break them.
Precisely. Instead of playing the guitar conventionally, using a pick or the pads of his fingers, he develops a completely unique technique. He starts plucking the guitar strings with his nails.
Oh, wow. And the source mentions the goal there was to mimic the sound of the Malian, right? Which is a traditional Malian string instrument.
Yes, exactly. By striking the strings with his nails, he's getting a sharper, more percussive attack. He's essentially hacking the acoustic guitar to make it sound like a completely different instrument.
That's brilliant.
And he completely rejects European tuning standards. He alters the tension and the relationship of the strings to mold the guitar to fit African rhythms.
And the source has this beautiful description of the resulting sound, calling it the desert wind and the Niger River coexisting.
It's very poetic, but it's sonically accurate.
But wait, if he is actively rejecting Western musical rules, how is the guitar acting as what the source calls an extension of words and a carrier of social memory? I mean, in Western music, the guitar is usually the bed that the singer lies on, right?
Right.
You strum the chords and the voice does the storytelling.
Right, but if Koité is tuning his guitar to mimic the Kamaliangoni, and he's plucking melodies with his nails rather than strumming standard chords, the guitar isn't just an accompaniment anymore.
So what is it?
It becomes a narrative voice of its own. It's speaking the musical language of the traditional instruments, so it isn't just expressing an emotion, it's carrying the literal sonic history of the people.
Ah, I see.
The instrument itself, through the specific rhythms and tunings he's engineered, is doing the work of the griot before he even opens his mouth to sing.
The guitar is a co-narrator. It's pulling up those roots right alongside his voice.
Exactly.
But once he reinvents the guitar to hold all that history,
Yeah.
he still has a logistical problem. He needs a vehicle to take this highly localized historic sound and bring it to the modern city.
Which brings us to 1988, when he formed the band Bamada.
And the name itself is doing a lot of heavy lifting there.
Oh, definitely. Bamada is a slang term meaning people of Bamako, which is the capital city of Mali.
So the name is acting as a literal bridge between the deep, rural folk traditions he's drawing from and the modern urban life of the city.
And the structure of the band reflects that exact same bridge. He fused a Western format using a bass and a drum kit with traditional African instruments like the balafon, which is a wooden xylophone, and the kamaleangoni we mentioned earlier.
But he didn't just mix instruments, he mixed the people, right?
Yes. Crucially, Koité intentionally brought together band members from different ethnic backgrounds across Mali.
Which is amazing.
He didn't ask them to adapt to a standardized, generic pop sound. He asked them to bring their specific, distinct ethnic rhythms to the table.
And when they perform live, the source notes he sings in 6 different languages. Bambara, Dogon, French, English, Songhai, and Po.
He is building an ensemble that reflects the reality of the country.
Okay, let me push back slightly on behalf of the listener for a second. If an artist takes all these highly distinct, hyper-local ethnic rhythms from all over the country and mashes them up with Western basses, drum kits, and English lyrics, isn't there a risk there?
A risk of what?
Is combining all these distinct ethnic rhythms and Western instruments just watering down the tradition to make it more digestible? Like making a world music smoothie for a global audience to consume without having to think too hard.
It is the exact trap that swallows a lot of immensely talented artists when they try to cross over. But the source makes a crucial distinction here. It separates the idea of being a guardian of tradition from being a translator.
The guardian versus the translator. I like that.
Right. A guardian views tradition as fragile. They want to freeze the music in time, put it behind glass, and ensure nobody touches it or changes it.
Keep it pure.
Exactly. Koité doesn't view himself that way, but he also doesn't want to just westernize the music to sell records. He operates as a translator. He wants to take Mali's internal diversity and translate it into a single, unified ensemble that the outside world can actually understand.
So he isn't blurring all the different cultures together. He is creating a space where they can all converse with each other.
Yes. When he sings in those 6 languages, the source says he is embodying a multilingual identity on stage.
That's a brilliant strategy. And this translation strategy worked, obviously. But the way it reached the global stage is entirely counterintuitive. It did the exact opposite of what the international music industry expected at that time.
Which is fascinating. Following the quiet success of Bamada's 1991 debut album, Musoko, they hit a massive turning point in 1998 with the album Ma Ya.
And if you think back to the late 90s, the trend for global music was to add more. Producers were adding layers of heavy percussion, throwing in electronic synths, trying to make everything club-ready.
Like we said at the start, you overpower the noise with more noise.
Right. But Koité goes the other way. Instead of adding layers, he strips the music down. He achieves what the source calls the folkization of African music.
Folkization.
Yeah. He removes the heavy synthetic layers and puts all the focus on the organic, raw relationship between his hacked acoustic guitar and the human voice.
And by taking away the artificial elements, he exposed the cultural core. The international response was massive. He started collaborating with legends like Ry Cooder, and he became a huge part of the Putumayo Presents Africa series.
Which introduced his sound to millions of listeners worldwide.
Absolutely. The source quotes the American blues singer Bonnie Raitt, who is a massive fan, and she said something perfect. When you listen to Habib, you hear Africa with no cliches.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Counterintuitively, removing the bells and whistles made the music's cultural core much stronger and more globally appealing.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, his decision to strip the music down paved the way for an entire genealogy of what is now called urban acoustic fusion.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he proved to the industry that an artist didn't have to shout to be heard globally. He inspired the next generation of Malian artists, incredible musicians like Rokia Traore, Fatoumata Diawara, and Vieux Farka Touré to deepen their own personal acoustic expressions.
So let's look under the hood of that breakthrough 1998 album to see exactly why this stripped-down music feels so different to our ears. Because the source gives us a structural analysis that explains this on a philosophical level.
Yeah, it uses the track Wasi from Maya as a prime example.
Right.
Structurally, it has a very relaxed tempo, sitting around 80 beats per minute, playing in a 68-time signature.
Which already gives it a swaying, rolling feel rather than a rigid march.
Exactly. And over that tempo, the track builds a 3-layer polyrhythm. You have the acoustic guitar, you have a cajon, which is a box-shaped percussion instrument, and a calabash, a percussion instrument made from a dried gourd.
So 3 rhythmic elements all interacting simultaneously.
Right, and over that rhythm, the music is built on a pentatonic scale, utilizing what music theorists call non-functional harmony.
Okay, to translate that for those of us who aren't ethnomusicologists, what does non-functional harmony actually do to the listener's ear?
Well, in a standard Western pop song, harmony is functional. Think of it like a musical argument that has to be resolved. You start at the root chord, you move away to build tension, and the chords literally function to pull you back to a satisfying resolution at the end.
It's a journey with a strict destination.
Exactly. But Koité uses a pentatonic scale, a 5-note scale with non-functional harmony. The notes aren't aggressively pulling you toward a resolution, they just exist in relationship to each other.
So there's no desperate musical need to resolve the tension.
None at all. And add in the way he handles vocals on that track. The singers aren't performing in unison. They use this melodic echo where voices answer other voices, creating a dialogic structure.
And the profound takeaway from the source here is the cumulative effect of all these structural choices. When you combine that 68 tempo, the 3 overlapping rhythms, the echoing vocals, and that non-functional harmony, it creates a sense of circular time.
Circular time.
The rhythm continuously returns to itself. It completely subverts the linear time progression we expect in standard Western pop songs.
Right, because Western pop music's linear time feels exactly like a ticking clock. It's a straight line marching toward a deadline.
It's building up to the big chorus, racing toward the final fade out. It feels anxious, whereas Mali's circular time feels entirely different. It feels like the changing of the seasons or the physical rhythm of breathing in and out.
Always returning, always present.
Exactly. There's absolutely no rush to get to the end of the song. The music isn't trying to transport you to a destination. It's creating an environment for you to exist within right now.
And this musical structure literally manifests Mali's underlying philosophy of time as a sonic experience. You are hearing their worldview.
And that deeply grounded philosophy inevitably shapes how Koité responds to the very real, very modern crises happening in his country.
We definitely have to acknowledge the reality of the context he is creating this music in. Since the 1990s, Mali has suffered through severe compounding challenges: civil wars, brutal ethnic conflicts, the rise of Islamic extremism.
It's been a period of profound instability.
But Koichi's response isn't to make loud, angry, or directly critical political music. He doesn't grab the megaphone.
Right. Just like he stripped down the sound of his guitar, he strips down his message to offer a purely symbolic vision of peace.
His 2007 album Afriki was a direct call for solidarity across the African continent. And his 2014 album Sue symbolically depicted a post-Civil War Mali.
He's offering a vision of what healing looks like. And he famously stated, "I make music without borders, but its roots are in Mali."
That roots and branches metaphor defines his entire ethos. You have the roots driven deep into the soil, keeping the tree stable, and the branches extending out to the world.
And his legacy continues. He won the African Cultural Merit Award in 2023. And looking ahead to 2025, he launched the Acoustic Mali project to specifically support young, up-and-coming guitarists.
Passing the griot tradition forward.
So what does this all mean? How does this localized pride act as a form of resistance against a chaotic world?
Well, this raises an important question. The source's final argument highlights that in an era of climate change and profound cultural disconnect, Koité's music proves that local pride and global dialogue can absolutely coexist.
They aren't mutually exclusive.
Not at all. His music is a quiet methodology for restoring social solidarity.
It's amazing. He transformed a single acoustic guitar into a vessel for the memory of the Malian people. He moved from the ancient griot tradition to global acoustic fusion without ever losing his roots.
It is, as the source concludes, an act of making the present human again, rather than just being nostalgic for the past.
And for you listening, whether you're dealing with overwhelming news or just shifting global trends, there is immense power in Koité's model of being a translator rather than building walls, holding onto your roots while extending your branches outward.
And if experiencing music through circular time instead of linear time changes how we hear a song, how might adopting a circular mindset change how you perceive your own daily routines?
Oh, that's a great thought.
How would it alter the way you view your personal history and the relentless pressure of your own deadlines if you stopped viewing them as a straight line to a destination?
Something to think about. Sometimes the most revolutionary act is to stand your ground, pull from your roots, and simply whisper.